Yep, to the yep. You already know what time it is, man. It's your girl POC. Turn your radios up, spread the word, spread the message. You already know how we come in each and every Friday. You got to get up anyway. So why not get it with your girl POC, man? Here on 900 AM WRD, 96.1 Word Radio, Eco Word. We reviving your airways, bringing you that environmental justice news that's for you and about you, educating you and re-educating you about Philadelphia and beyond. But right now, I got Philadelphia's finest on the line. We got Aaron, one of Philadelphia's journalists who shares the same type of love for me when it comes down to that EJ, that capital EJ, environmental justice. And he just recently read a story for PlanPhilly, and it came across my desk, and it was something that I was excited to talk about because it's not a part of a city, not part of the city that we talk about a lot, and I think we should talk about it. So I'm gonna bring Aaron onto the conversation. We're gonna talk about a story he just wrote about the Logan section of Philadelphia. Aaron, good morning. How are you feeling today?
Good morning. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No doubt, and when it comes down to just your work in general, just about environmental justice, why do you find that to be such a passion for you?
So I actually came at this story from sort of a community development angle. This is actually a piece of land that I have been had on my radar, I guess, for since 2015, believe it or
Okay.
not. It's something that I
2015?
2015. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I was covering the general Northwest Philadelphia area. This project, this area, the Logan Triangle, came up because it had a developer at that time. And so I wrote about it, that possibility of the land being reused. And now here we are all these years later, talking about the city looking for a new developer.
No doubt. And when I read just the title of it, right? Sometimes you just get tired, and you think about someone getting tired of a piece of land that is technically, a really big piece of land. And if you really, have the money to do something with it, you can make a lot of money off of it, right? So when you think about this land, why do you think that he got tired of it?
I think that was a quote from one of the nearby neighbors that I spoke to for this story, who has
Okay.
been there since the 80s and has seen this 35-acre parcel just sit there undeveloped for all these years. And that's through all these development proposals and all these community meetings and a lot of time and effort, and real focus on a plot that really does, as you're saying, have hold out a lot of hope potentially for improving the neighborhood
My
and
fingers.
bringing something that could really be a benefit to the neighborhood. But alas, even after all these efforts, all these meetings, all these hours, we're still kind of back where we started. And so I think a lot of community members, like the folks that I've spoke to, are just sort of like, well, I'll believe it when I see it, because at this point you haven't shown me otherwise or given me a reason to feel otherwise.
No doubt. And based on your studies and the things that you were able to talk about with community members, what were some of the key issues that led to the release of the space? Like, why did the developer want to go away with it?
So just to start out, the developer did not get back to me, so I don't know directly why they stepped away. What I was told by neighbors was that essentially, they couldn't get the thing off the ground. Specifically, they ran into funding issues, which have been a problem with this particular parcel for a long time. The big issue here is that this land is not stable for
Yeah.
development. It needs to be remediated, which is something that costs millions and millions of dollars. And that's an upfront cost. That's in addition to what it would cost you to build and all the time you may spend on getting zoning variances. So in a lot of ways, that has been a hindrance to developing this 35 acres that, at one time, you know, several decades ago at this point, housed, nearly 1,000 homes.
Yeah.
And now it's just a bunch of grassy lots near the Roosevelt Boulevard. So
And when you talk about not being stable, because some people, you hear that and you're like, what do you mean land not being stable? Can you just break that down a little bit for us, Aaron?
yeah, sure. So the homes that used to sit on the Logan Triangle were built in the 1920s, and they were built on top of a creek bed that was underneath and that was filled in with ash and cinder, which is not a very stable mixture. So over time, it sort of acted like quicksand, and the homes began to sink.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And so they were sinking for decades and decades. And then in the mid 80s, there was a big gas main explosion. And that's when the city realized that these homes were at such a state that they could not be saved, basically. And so they went about condemning them and demolishing them and relocating folks.
No doubt. And it makes me want to just ask you this question. You may not know the answer to it, but why do you feel like the city continues to push it off to someone? You know, the city wants someone to buy it. They want people to get it, they want it to be put off their hands. Why don't you think the city wants to do anything for themselves?
You mean like, why does the city not want to develop it itself?
Yeah, as they see that, over time, they try to sell it, they try to, get someone to purchase it. They got a developer to purchase it. We're now into that happened in 2015. We're now in 2023, almost 24, and it hasn't gone anywhere. We see that that section of the city is a space where people need housing. So why not try to actually take the initiative to want to put the money where their mouths is as well, to try to help with those millions of dollars that it will take to get that ground leveled, or, at least stable enough for houses to be developed on it. Even if it's tiny homes, we're not talking about, or old brick and mortar, old type of century homes. We're talking about, little things, little communities, even trailer homes type small homes that can actually fit there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's the case that, with this request for proposals, as has been the case with others, that there is no public money attached specifically for remediation. And that means that any developer that would take on this project would have to come up with that money. It may still be public money, but it is essentially on the developer to come up with those funds. I don't know why the city has not, over the years, tucked away money for that purpose, because I think community members certainly believe that if that upfront cost was if there was money from the city for that, or at least some, that would sort of help with getting this thing going, because you're not faced with this task of getting all this money, getting an environmental study, all these expenses before you even go about building. So it's a great question. I don't have the answer to it, but it is something that has been raised, especially because this has gone on for so long. And when you think about sort of what the city's budget is, I think the last one was over $5 billion. Community members say, the idea that we couldn't have squirreled away, $10-20 million for remediation, it's troubling to them, because as we've been talking about, this property is huge, and it could be really something more than an eyesore that it's been for all these years.
And when you talk about an eyesore, right, because I also want to get into some of the conversation that you had with some of the community members. How are they feeling about it? What are their thoughts about this big plot they call the Logan Triangle in the middle of their community?
Yeah, I mean, they're really tired of it. And there is a sense, at least from some of the folks that I talked to, that this is an example of environmental racism. Logan at this point is a lower income Black neighborhood, and their thought is, if this was somewhere else, somewhere whiter, somewhere wealthier, potentially, that the city may not have let this go on so long. And so there's a lot of frustration over kind of a lack of action, even though the city has, to its credit, tried to do something with this land by putting it out for bid all these years. It's, we haven't seen any of those efforts had a chance to become something. So the city, for their part, does really want to see this plot get developed, but at the same time, like you mentioned, there hasn't been funding to go with that, and perhaps that has played a part in this still being something that we're talking about today.
Yeah. And I want to ask a question about just the education behind it, right? As you speak with, community members and they're learning a little bit more about what this plot means and, how this plot is shaped and actually how much the plot is worth and how much people have lost also investing into the plot. How can we educate, our community members or the community members specifically in that Logan area about how they can probably save this space themselves, or they can kind of, get together and collaborate and make this something that can be beneficial for the Logan section.
Yeah.
In your opinion, of course.
Yeah, I mean, so the city at this point owns the land legally. So unless community members wanted to get together and put up a bid, um, that would be the only way to sort of for them to take ownership. But I will say that the request for proposal does specifically say that they want this land to have a community use, and they want developers whoever that are interested in bidding on this lot to really take a look at this planning study for the neighborhood that was the result of a lot of community input in terms of what the community wanted, not just for the Logan Triangle, but for the blocks beyond it. And that does include uses like affordable housing, and recreation spaces, that the people don't want this to just be a venture for some developer to make money, but that it needs to actually serve a purpose for a neighborhood that could really use it, that where people really do are looking for more housing, do need city services, do need a place to go that's safe.
And I'm not sure if you know the answer to this question, but I did want to ask, about the public health concern. Is there any type of public health concern that is attached to this space? The fact that it may not, well, it is actually, it's been considered unstable already. And people who live around it, does it have any, safety hazards that come with it?
I don't think so. At least I don't know of any specifically. I think the primary danger here is that if the land is not remediated, that you run into the potential risk of future structures sinking, as like the homes did, decades ago. So the way that the lot is zoned at this point, housing is allowed. You can't put up single family homes, but apartments are available. So you could, for example, have a rec center with, I don't know if anyone would build this, but you could have a rec center, for example, with apartments over it, or some kind of mixed use, where you have a kind of a commercial community use on the bottom and apartments on the top. That is allowed at this point. Although obviously there are opportunities for folks to seek a variance and do other things that go beyond what's allowed at the moment. But as the land stands, you could see some of those things.
Mm-hmm. And just imagining that some of that stuff is there, Aaron, just thinking about it, how do you think that would help with the development of that area, such as jobs and placement?
Yeah, look, I mean, having a residential neighborhood that has 35 acres of housing missing is, generally not something that you want to have in any neighborhood, anywhere in the country. But in Philadelphia, we have a big problem with vacant land, and to have this much vacant land in one neighborhood, community members think that really takes away from the value of the neighborhood, that having what they consider, as I've said, an eyesore really detracts from developers wanting to put things there, or from other people wanting to move, or that it destabilizes the public safety in that area. So there's all kinds of kind of ripple effects that have come from this parcel over the last few decades, that the neighborhood's really tired of dealing with. And I don't think anyone would sit here and say that redeveloping the Logan Triangle is going to revive Logan. I think there's a lot of other issues there that would take time, but it certainly would help quite a bit. And I think it would also just, certainly from the neighbor's perspective, generate some civic pride in the neighborhood, because people really do care about Logan. They do care about where they live, as we see across the city. And so to have this huge thing out there just sitting there really doesn't help with all that.
No doubt. And through your research, just do you think that climate change, with everything that's going on with global warming, from the storms that we're having, the heat advisories, all of that, do you feel like that can cause any, external or internal injuries to that bottom level at all, where it could actually collapse a little bit faster or sink a little bit faster than projected?
That's an interesting question. I don't know for sure. Housing and development is more my expertise, so I'll leave that to the to the climate experts.
Okay.
But certainly, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, just even as it stands. So you know, it's not going to get any better without some help. I can say that.
No doubt, Aaron. And the deadline for the next time for someone to be able to bid onto this property is January 11th of next year, 2024. How do you see that, happening as far as just like a projection? Do you see a lot of people going after it, or do you think that this is going to be a slow start for the Logan section?
I think, in talking to developers for this story, this is a unique lot. It has a unique history, and then there are the unique environmental circumstances that we've been talking about. So I would not imagine that you would have a rush, that you'll get, hundreds of developers who want to bid on this property. It comes with a lot of problems, and it's an expensive project, to be blunt about it. So but I do think for some people, this will be a good fit, if they have the expertise, particularly with environmental remediation, and particularly if they're familiar with Philadelphia. I mean, it is a property you can see from the Roosevelt Boulevard. I mean, it's pretty accessible, and that could be a draw. In terms of the timing, I don't know if those deadlines will stick. Even if they do, I think it'll be, some time before you would actually see anything get built there, because as we discussed, you got to do, environmental studies, and then you got to do the remediation, and then you got to do the construction. And then there's, obviously going to be a lot of community meetings and input, that will need to happen before anything really gets built. So I think it'll be a while. So I think a lot of community folks are just kind of holding their breath and doing their best to sum up the energy to go through this process once again.
No doubt. And Aaron, my last question I want to ask you is about Council Member Cindy Bass, right? She has a quote in your article that says she wants to make sure that there's quality development. And as a journalist, someone who covers that area, do you believe that as a council member, she's really going to be able to hold that when at the same time that section needs the money and the city needs the money? Do you think she's going to hold that, or do you think she's going to take the first bid?
I mean, it's ultimately, she does have, it's hard to say. I mean, she does have a role in this. I mean, for the land to be transferred to a developer, that requires her to introduce a resolution, so that it can be sold. So she can, thwart the process or insert herself in the process, however you want to say it. It's hard to say. I mean, she is a council member who has exerted councilmatic prerogative often in her district, and there are various examples, but her district includes Logan, but it's also Germantown and Mount Airy and Chestnut Hill. So the bottom is, I don't, but we'll just sort of have to see what proposals come up. As I said, I don't expect there to be a lot, and so I think each individual proposal will get a fairly high degree of scrutiny, whether it's from the councilwoman or from city officials.
Or community members, Aaron, because they got a lot to say too.
They will also have a lot to say. No doubt. Yeah,
Aaron, I appreciate you coming on this morning. Thank you for helping revive the airways here in WRD. Telling people how they can find more information about you, and if they want to check out this article, how can they find it?
Yeah, so the best way to check out PlanPhilly content is to go to WHYY.org. And then we also have stories on our airwaves at 90.9 FM.
No doubt, Aaron. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Yep. Thanks for so much having on.
No doubt. You already know what time it is, man. Keep your radios locked. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. It's your girl, POC. Take us out.